2023 was a relatively positive year for me with gaming, with only something at the end of the year really ticking me off. So I thought it'd be a good idea to do a video again ranking my personal experiences throughout the year from worst to best. These are the games I actually played this year, not necessarily the ones that were released, so just bear that in mind when you watch. Don't Scream will not be on this list at all, because one, it's still in early access. The developers are clearly still working to add features that would make it a much more interesting experience for people. But for the most part, I didn't find it scary, and I found it a little lackluster. But there wasn't enough here for me to give reason to put it on the list. Likewise for Lethal Company. I just didn't get that far into this one. Solo excursions are kind of tedious, and I really suck at it. It doesn't help that accessibility-wise, this is an absolute nightmare. There's all this text on the screen that you're required to read, but if you try to use Microsoft Magnifier, it tethers to the centre of the screen, making it impossible to read anything else. So from a sight-impaired gamer's point of view, it was absolutely frustrating. Also, there are a couple of games I would like to quickly mention that aren't on the list. Resident Evil 4 just did not play remake, sorry, didn't specify. Just did not play enough of it. Struggled visually with it, but it was fun to see that classic game brought back with better visuals, especially as somebody who played the original PS2 version. I'm looking forward to playing more, but I just found it a bit of an accessibility nightmare. Portal with RTX looks amazing, and I'm so glad that they've upgraded the graphics on that game. Except my computer really struggled to play it. I am only running an RTX 2060, but yeah, I could get it to work sometimes when you tweaked the settings, even though I tried it with the recommended default for my system. It still really struggled. I haven't gone back to it since, because I got stuck on a level where when you would go through a portal, it would like push you sideways instead of letting you bounce back and forth in and out, which is really necessary on the puzzle that I got stuck on. But I just love that it's been modernized. It's still the same game, you know, the mechanics haven't changed, all that. It's not been changed from the ground up, but the fact that it's a reskin, and it just looks amazing. It just really makes me wish there was a third Portal, or a remake of those games. Not a remake, just a remaster kind of thing, officially. And the other reskin that I played, The Last of Us Part 1, looks amazing. It's a PlayStation 5 exclusive. I don't necessarily feel it needed to be a PS5 exclusive. I think this would have run relatively well on PS4. I think really it was just done to sell PS5s. But it looks amazing. I mean, the graphics on the original still hold up, even the PS3 version for me. But it is, and I don't necessarily feel like it's necessary to go, we need to bring it up to speed with the second version. Because it's like, that's how games work. They progress. They get better. We don't need to, because then when The Last of Us Part 3 inevitably comes out, then they'll say the graphics are better now. Now we need to repackage parts 1 and 2. And the problem is, they put this game out full price. We're talking about a, 7-8 year old game they were charging £67 or £60 or £70 for. And it just wasn't worth it. It didn't have the factions multiplayer. I think that's been added since, or some kind of multiplayer has been added since. I've not gone back to it since I played it. But it didn't have the classic factions multiplayer, which I believe they've shut down since, which is garbage because that was such a good mode. And it is just buggy. It is a lot less stable than the original game. There's trophies that are bugged. There are just issues left, right and centre. I get that people worked hard on this, but it was fully unnecessary. It looks beautiful. I kind of like that they've put some of the newer crafting versions in, but again, I just felt it was a little unnecessary. But yeah, those I just wanted to give a passing thought on because they were remasters and reskins, as opposed to full new games. Either that or I just didn't play them enough. But getting on with the main list, here are my games of 2023. Starting out with the worst, the most frustrating, the most... I haven't felt this angry towards a game since Hello Neighbor. Is it worse than Hello Neighbor? Not necessarily. This had a lot more promise. But this is also a really late edition because I only played it like 2-3 weeks ago. Came out to start December. It is The Walking Dead Destinies. And as a massive fan of The Walking Dead TV series, this was like a punch to the face. Just as a gamer and a fan, it retreads it retreads the start of the series through these very low graphical, it looks like a mobile game. But not only they've taken this art style that makes them try to look like the stars of the show, but look very off, like your kind of Kirkland cheap ass version of the characters, who are then voiced by none of the original actors. There are all these. Some people seem to be trying, others definitely not so much. Control systems are awful, and I played it on mouse and keyboard originally and had troubles there, so I thought, right, I'll try controller. That was worse, far worse. And I will say, I randomly discovered that apparently there's some kind of Assassin's Creed-esque eagle vision that you can click by pressing the right stick in that I didn't know you could do on the keyboard version. I had to then go back to the keyboard version to look, to then go, oh really? I should have pressed Z? I didn't know that was a thing. Some of the choices for the keys are ridiculous. There are some that are like kind of very Daisy-esque, you know, F is interact and stuff like that. But others you're just like, why? Why would you have that? And then when I was using the controller version, I couldn't figure out how to do some basic moves. And it doesn't have it on the instructions. And even worse is I got to a section where it's like, use your gun. And the prompt on the side just says, oh, use left and right mouse buttons to shoot. And I'm like, that's nice. I'm stood there with Rick stood there with a baseball bat in his hand. And they're like, shoot, you gotta shoot. Gotta make sure I got ammo. And I'm like, okay. And I'm waving around this bloody baseball bat. And I'm like, okay, yeah, shoot. And I got what it was saying, like with aiming and stuff. Like I could throw the bat. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted the gun. And I still to this day have no clue how to change weapons. I tried every key, every button, and there is nothing on the control system. You can't change the controls. There's no like, reassign your controls. No, you can't. It's so broken, and the AI is dumb as it's so dumb. It just I'm broken. I mean, it changes between either seeing you from miles away, or you could be stood right in front of it, and it's like, I'll come get you eventually. It's so bad. And this game is sold on the premise of being able to play through the TV show and make your own choices, like change up characters. Like, do you want to handcuff Merle on the roof like they did in the show, or do you want to handcuff T-Dog there instead and totally back up the annoying Merle. And you're like, okay, this is, and genuinely I was fascinated by how this would pay off. It doesn't. It's just like having a reskin. There's just a different character playing exactly the same role that the other character did. And you're like, okay, but those characters are so different. Why would you just have them spouting the same lines? There are sections where you send off characters on you know. Well, I mean, this thing has a good, you know, way of not introducing you to any characters. I hope you watch the show if you're going to play this, because it randomly throws in characters, never introduces you to them, and then just expects you to know who the F they are. And you're like, oh, okay, who are you? And I'm just sat there going, yay, Morgan! Or whatever. And they never introduce themselves. I think Glenn is the only one I remember introducing himself. It just... You have these moments where you can send off party members to go get supplies. It's kind of very much like was it Assassin's Creed Brotherhood? Where you could send your assassins off to train and do missions across the sea and stuff like that. It feels like that, and then you make choices, like, if they're in trouble, you're like, do you tell them to stay put and wait for backup, or do you tell them to try and fight their way out? There are glimmers of hope there, where you're like, this could be actually interesting. For all of 5 seconds where you then realise that it makes no difference whatsoever. There is promise here. Unfortunately, it is published by Game Mill, who also published the awful King Kong game, Skull Island, this year. It's not the same development team, but judging by... I didn't play the King Kong game, but considering the way that apparently Game Mill put that development team through hell, that wouldn't surprise me that that's the same that happened here. There is promise here, but I can see that a rush to push this through really quickly really hindered it. It's ugly, it's broken, and I feel frustrated generally just how much it could have done something and then it just didn't. I felt heartbroken in a way. And thank God none of the actors, no wonder nobody, nobody would have had the paycheck to cover some of these actors, but thank God nobody went, yeah, no, I'll join in to be a part of that. No, just don't. It's headache inducing. So yeah, definitely worst of the year. But originally my worst of the year was easily going to be, until that came along, Enchanted Portals. Now, to be fair, they have patched this game more recently, and it does seem, judging by their devlogs, it does seem like they're listening to feedback and are trying to improve this game. But there seems to be a very big disconnect between the high quality of the artwork and the programming. This is a very... it wants to be a spiritual successor to Cuphead. Kind of absolutely cribs a lot from that game, gameplay and style-wise. And you're playing as these two magicians that get lost across worlds and stuff like that. And you're like, okay, I'm up for more kind of Cuphead action, you know, difficulty and that kind of fun cartoon art style. And then you actually play the game. And you're like, please stop. I hate this game. Again, I can see some improvement from the patch. But no, it's still broken and frustrated. Not helped by... Recently, I went back to it to get more footage, only for then it to show only quarter of the screen and the rest is in just black. And I tried changing the screen resolution. I tried everything. And it just would not work. And I'm like, okay, how am I supposed to play this game? So yeah, that didn't help. But this is, yeah, a side-scrolling shooter game. It's got repeat backgrounds. You're talking about like a section of background that's like yay big that just repeat, copy, paste, over and over. It's like going through watching like an old Hanna-Barbera You know, like kind of Flintstones or Scooby-Doo cartoon where they have the backgrounds rotating. It's that kind of thing where they then just spam you with sprites just over and over again. And sometimes it's an artificial difficulty in that, whereas the RNG in Cuphead was tight in that if you messed up, it was just you not being good because they were properly programmed to come up in set areas. Despite the roguelike, you know, roguelikeness of them, where it was always random, it was still always fair. That's not the case here. They are just thrown at you willy-nilly, and then just and it's just unfair, and they're repetitive. And you start with a tutorial. The tutorial Cuphead is renowned for throwing some game reviewers, game journalists, you know, for struggling to get through that. This tutorial, now I'm not against no hand holding and stuff, but this game tutorial is like, right, here you are. Now here's a little drawing of what you should do here, like shoot or something or whatever. But we're not going to tell you what button to press. Figure that out, bitches. Not even kidding. I'm stood down, I'm like, okay, so use a special attack or dash. Let me press every single key until something works. And things like changing magic. It doesn't tell you that different characters, if they're coloured a certain way, mean different magic. So then you have to figure out how to change your magic. And you're like, okay. It's just, and I'm like, and it's infuriating. This was until Walking Dead Destinies came along, this was easily my most frustrating and most disappointing game of the year, because I was so looking forward to something that had clearly been inspired by Cuphead, and then just couldn't pull it off. And it looks pretty, but it just doesn't work. And then, to make it worse, so the checkpointing, so it's bad enough. So in true Cuphead style, it has like this thing where it doesn't you know, checkpoint kind of, you're supposed to get through a long section in one go. So you go through 2 sections, and then the third part is like the boss battle. Well, I got to the boss battle and died, except it turned out, thankfully, that it had checkpointed at the start of that boss battle. So I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Except then the game glitched and froze up, and I couldn't do anything. So I was like, okay, I'll just exit out. I couldn't go back to menu or anything. So I was like, right. So I quit the game, went back in, thought, right, it had checkpointed at the boss. So, you know, I booted it back up, went continue, start again. No. All of my progress had been lost in that one world. I was like, are you actually kidding me? And that just turned me off straight away. I was like, I have no desire to go back to this repetitive, frustrating game. So, yeah. I don't recommend this. I get it's an indie game. I can see that they're trying, but at the moment, the way that it stands at the moment, and especially if I can't fix why it's not working graphically, like with its resolution on my screen at the moment, I have no real desire to go back to it. But in the same vein, next up is Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection. When I played this, I was automatically making comparisons with Enchanted Portals. But Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, which is a remake of the classic game, the classic Nintendo Entertainment System game, which was renowned for being one of the most difficult games of its time, and has inspired a lot of those kind of hard, you know, those difficult games since. This game is, unlike Enchanted Portals, yes, there is an element of artificial difficulty where it's just like, let me spam you! You're finding this hard, right? I'm just going to throw every enemy at you at the same time and you can deal with it. Much like Enchanted Portals, it's not as refined with its RNG in placement of enemies, so that can be unfair at times. But controls are a lot tighter. Also, the backgrounds are different. They don't just cycle through every 5 feet. So that's nice. There is a severe issue with pixel perfect triggering systems for platforms and that, which I found just eternally frustrating. I would get to certain sections where I would jump, and then the next platform I was supposed to get on hadn't triggered, and I'm just like, hello? And that, again, felt like a difficulty that was very artificially placed to make you go, no, 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 you need to do it exactly the way we say you do it. It's like, oh, okay. But it's actually a lot of fun. It's very problematic and has a lot of issues. But I love that they've kept... I love the art style. I love that they've kept the your character Arthur... who when he gets hit, he loses parts of his armor to the point that he gets down to his heart patterned boxers. The fact that they've kept that humor as a way of indicating your damage, I love that they've kept that. There's a lot of charm here. I love the art style, some pretty music, but it's just very problematic, and unfortunately came out a couple years ago. And I don't think there's any desire to patch it any more than Capcom really need to, which is sad. So nowhere near as bad as Enchanted Portals by any means. Just has its issues that make it frustrating. But as a notoriously difficult game anyway, I think that's fair to say. You know, it's meant to frustrate you on a Battletoads kind of level. Next up, we have got Keep Out, which is clearly heavily inspired by the games by Playdead, Limbo and Inside, and yet somehow, I don't know, it's got a charm. I love the art style. I love the environments. You're playing as this... that doesn't seem to be quite clear who you're playing as. You're playing as this little character prince who's being chased down by humans and stuff. But whereas, say, in Limbo, for example, you have this very stark art style where if something... it's a 2D scroller. And if something passes in the foreground, your character still stands out because you're quite big on the screen and you're silhouetted. It's just it pops. It's not too difficult to see. Whereas on this, your character is tiny and just blends a lot of the time. And then you will get these, pieces of furniture or other geometry that come into the foreground and just block your view altogether. It was just visually a mess. It's an exceptionally short game, which isn't too bad if you feel like it's just narratively done. But it feels like it wants to go, look, I can do platforming too. Hi, you all loved those games. How about you love me too? And work and love has been put in here. But it much like, say, Enchanted Portals, it feels like it's trying to... It doesn't feel like it's paying homage to the genre. It feels like it's just going, I want to be a part of this too. Please let me be part of the group. So, yeah, it's just very mediocre. And its shortness... And I mean, it's not the shortest game on this list, but it just feels like a wet squib. I'm just like, you come away and you're just like, oh, okay, great, next. I feel bad being mean about it. It's by an indie developer, but I think it's just because I struggled with it so much visually. If your character wasn't that small, if it was a little more of it, there were things like ropes and that you're supposed to jump onto. just blend with the background, and you end up walking back and forth, and there's no real indication of what you can interact with. Like, there's not a button prompt or something. It's not always obvious what you can interact with. It's not, and I'm not asking for hand holding, but it would be nice to have some kind of visual cue that makes things a little more helpful from an accessibility point of view. I don't know. I think that's probably what made it worse for me. And just the storytelling just feels like, I don't know, here's some levels. You're being chased by these humans, or you're now in a water level. Haha! Because water levels are in every game, right? I don't know. It just feels like it's trying, and it's just like, ugh, let me just, yeah. I feel bad, but it's not an awful game. I just feel, again, like there was a lot of promise that just got squandered, that just kind of fell short at the finish line. So yeah, that was Keep Out. Like I said, not much to say about it. Just kind of middle of the road, a bit mediocre. But next up is The Demonologist. Is this The Demonologist or just Demonologist? I'm not 100% sure. But this is another game trying to jump on a bandwagon of sorts. In this case, it's trying to jump on the Phasmophobia gameplay, where you play as a ghost hunter. You go to these different maps, cooperatively or multiplayer, or you can do it on your own. To be fair, you can play this game entirely on your own. It won't be fun on your own, trust me. I tried. It's an absolute miserable, boring slog on your own. This one I feel really lives and dies by the company that you keep. Thankfully I got to play it with just another guy, DayZ, Jag for short, and yeah, thankfully I had him as company, because otherwise I would have got annoyed with this. It feels like, but the problem is both Phasmophobia and Demonologist are in early access, so they are constantly being updated and adapted and stuff. But I feel like when this first came out, I felt like it had a lot more going for it than Phasmophobia did. Sorry, oh god, have I just unplugged my camcorder? It felt like it had taken the foundation of Phasmophobia and taking it further. Its instruments worked better. They were more interesting. But Phasmophobia has come a long way since then, and somehow really makes a lot of things in Demonologist feel primitive. Things like the animations and the locations and the actual ghost hunting just feels a lot more refined in Phasmophobia than it is here. And I think there's a lot of fun to be had in Demonologist, but for me personally it was a struggle, because I just found like you were just saying the same sentences over and over again. Is anybody there? You know, just talking to get a response from the ghost. And you would get to the points where you would try everything with every instrument, and it would not give you any further information. It would not give you any other reactions. And you're like, okay, right, so I have these three things left. Either I need a canvas print, canvas art painting, an ECG registration, a reaction, or a voice box. And you're walking around the whole house, and you are staying in every room for like half an hour at a time, trying everything to get a reaction, and nothing would happen. And you'd get to the point, you'd get so frustrated after a while, you're like, let's just guess. There's only so many times you can say the same 5 sentences or make jokes about it. I feel really bad for Jag, because I got really annoying with this, because I would just keep talking and keep talking, and he would be trying to talk to his chat and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know what he was saying to his chat, because he mutes himself, but yeah, I would be sat there yammering on and waiting for a reaction, and nothing would happen, and you'd just be like, okay. and it would just get irritating. And I felt like I was being irritating because I was trying to get it to work. But yeah, it was just, I really feel like this is a game that who you're playing with can make a massive difference. I feel like there's a lot of promise here. I felt like the maps started as they got bigger and bigger as you unlocked more, as more were released, as the the game got patched over and over. They released this hospital map, and it is massive, and it's like they expect you to have 4 players, and that's fine if you're happy to go open lobby and play with other people. But yeah, I felt like it was relying on that, and in a game where technically you should be able to play it on your own, it was just like, okay. And then the hospital especially is so dark. I personally really struggled to navigate. Poor Jag had to be like, no, follow me this way to get to the exit. Yes, a lot of the time you could be like, oh, you get used to a map, and then you would just find your way. But it was just frustrating. It was a frustrating experience. I enjoyed it, but it got old fast. Like, we had to level up to unlock the higher maps, and it just started to get old quite quickly. So yeah, thank you to Jag for playing it with me. I'm so glad I played this. I just feel like it needs a lot more work and just find its own identity, and I get that that's becoming more and more difficult because the genre is kind of, filled with these kind of, In Silence and Phasmophobia and those kind of games. They have become a lot more popular because, of course, those kind of multiplayer games that can bring you together if you can't game in real person and stuff like that. Those kind of games that aren't you against other people, but it's you against the game. Those are becoming a lot more popular, and this is the prime kind of genre where that is perfect, because you can team up to do these investigations that are actually really interesting. The deduction that is required here, figuring out, finding the evidence and stuff. Really love that. It can be a little hit and miss sometimes, and that's why I had to put it this low on the list. But next up is At Dead of Night. Hopefully I've got that title right. This is an FMV game, a full motion video, very reminiscent of those early 90s games, where you play this character who turns up at this hotel that is run by somebody. It jumps full into that trope of somebody with clear mental health issues being creepy and possibly evil, which, kind of spoilers, he kind of isn't. He's just disturbed. You kind of find out at the end that actually, it's not as black and white, which I think gives the story some strength. But the fact that you have to do these investigations where you talk to these ghosts who are all going, Jimmy, who is the owner of this hotel and is being made out to be an absolute whack job. Oh, it's his fault, he's a fucking loon, and stuff like that. It's like, okay, make him pay. It's like, okay. And so you go around this hotel, you go from room to room finding evidence pieces that you then have to match up to each other, and I really enjoyed that element. I just found it was very well handled. It is frustrating because if you get captured by Jimmy, you lose your stuff, and then you have to find your way back to a certain storage room to find stuff so that then you can make the connections, because you then go to do these interviews with these spirits in certain places that you have to find. You get clues to, but unless you see all the details in the little videos that it plays, it can be a little Sorry, I heard a spark then. I got worried that my monitor could have caught fire. You get these little clues that you then, you're supposed to find the ghosts, and it can be a little frustrating with how it's not always obvious. And there are times where Jimmy can hide around corners, and it's supposed to be obvious, but visually, I really struggle to see. And I would wait for him to go out of I would watch through the peepholes to watch him walk past, and then I would try to go in the opposite direction, and he would just whack me with his cudgel around the head, and you're just like, okay, where did you come from? It's very reliant on jump scares, and to be honest, it is creepy. Jimmy is creepy, as much as I don't like that whole mental health issues equals evil. I really enjoy it. The acting is so hammy. It's hilarious. But I think for what it is, and that nostalgia it's trying to hook into with this FMV game, these kind of games we don't really get anymore. I mean, I've played a couple of the games on my channel. Things like The Bunker and stuff like that. They're so cheesy. And it just fits right into that genre. I really enjoyed it. I just really struggle with a number of the visual situations. But yeah, no, I recommend it. I don't feel like it's perfect. And I think it is very niche and goes on a little too long at times. There's a lot of walking around up and down these 3 floors, searching these rooms, with every risk of your stuff being stolen at any given point. You find these keys to lock doors to stop Jimmy getting in the rooms if you're in them. There are parts where he fools you. He'll come into a room, you'll hide, and then you will hear the door shut, and you'll leave it for a while. You'll be quiet, and you come out thinking it's safe, and it turns out he was hiding. There's nothing really to give you, and there's no way to get rid of him unless you found the key to lock that room door and keep him out from coming in. There's nothing to indicate whether he might still be in the room. I do think the door shuts, the sound might be slightly, infinitesimally, slightly more different. But I'm not practiced enough to figure out the difference. I think it sucks because there's nothing you can do there's no length of time. I waited forever, hoping, I was sure he was there, and I waited and waited. I walked away, I made a cup of tea, I came back, I left, and he was still there. So I think they should have it where he leaves after a certain amount of time, or something, because it's not always so easy to find those keys. And like I say, if you get captured, that's it, you lose those keys. So yeah, there's a number of issues I find with this game, but I think it's very nostalgic, hilariously acted in, I don't know, it's that kind of acting kind of mentality. I just had fun with it. I had a laugh. It's just got some niggling frustrations, if you will. But that's kind of the problematic end of the ranking. Now we're getting into the good stuff. Starting out with Star Wars Jedi Survivor, follow-up to the Jedi Fallen Order game. We're continuing following Cal Kestis and the Merry Band as they continue against the dark side. It's pretty much more of the same that we've had before, except now in PS5 graphics. And I don't know, I feel like Respawn have done a good job here. It's fun to see Cameron Monaghan back as Cal, now in this kind of emo, dark, like troubled man, but still on the light side kind of Jedi. I found like he was a lot of fun to still follow, and some of the environments with the PS5 graphics are amazing. But to kind of, because there's been this ongoing joke, obviously Fallen Order, you could see the inspiration from stuff like the Uncharted games and stuff like that. And it feels like they've you know, the platforming on that pretty much runs the same, but they've you know, kind of toned down how obvious some levels and ledges are, to the point where I personally found it a bit difficult to sometimes see where the ledges were. It seemed to go from one extreme to the next, and yes, they are still obvious, but just for me personally, because obviously, you know, these higher end graphics, these more realistic graphics, everything blends a lot more, and especially like the start level and stuff where you're in this nighttime area, it was so dark. I just really struggle with that. And it's got this weird thing where it's got accessibility, where you can, your UI, you can change the size of the text so it's bigger. And you're like, okay, that's interesting, that's good. And you see it in game, and it's actually really big. Like, the game struggles where to place it, kind of big. But it's impressive. But then you get button prompts that just... But I was walking around easily for an hour. I have recording of over an hour of me walking around going, well, he's telling me to do this. He's telling me to get across. Where? And it turned out like the R1 button prompt was just tiny and blended in with the background. I did not spot it. No matter how many times I looked in that general area, I was like, it took me so long to find out what I was supposed to do. I just feel like your UI and things like that are not always particularly helpful. You could say, oh, look, we've given you larger text, but we're not going to help you with button prompts. Why would you need to know that? But combat, you know, controls otherwise as fluid, as fun as they were in the previous game. I really enjoyed it. I've not gotten to the end of the game yet, but for what I played, had a lot of fun. Voice acting, as usual, on point. Visually, like I say, it is beautiful. I just felt like sometimes, as a result of these more realistic graphics, it blended too much at times. But otherwise, great follow-up to Fallen Order, and considering how much I loved Fallen Order, yeah, I had a lot of fun. There are characters that are randomly added that I'm just sat there going, who are you? Who are you? But, plus side, this game didn't start with a fight against Ogdo-Bogdo, so, you know, plus all round, I guess. But no, I do recommend it. I just wish as well that the meditation circles were a bit more obvious. They definitely blended too much with the scenery. I don't know what it was. They just did not pop in the same way they had in the previous games, which meant I kept missing them, which was frustrating. So yeah, that was Jedi Survivor. Next up, we have got The Corridor. Much like the next game on this list, this is a very short, like 20-minute, half-hour, very narrative-driven experience that clearly takes a lot of inspiration from the Stanley Parable. It goes for this meta-commentary regarding the fear of a solo developer putting out their creation into the wide world and waiting to see what people's reactions are. And it's just, I hate to say, there is so much similarity to the Stanley Parable, and I feel like by saying that, I mean that as a diss towards the creator, and it's not. I feel like what they've done is use the inspiration as a good springboard for this narrative. I don't want to talk about this one too much because one, it is such a short experience. But two, also, I just don't want to give too much away because I feel like it's something that you really have to go through yourself to feel the growing anxiety on the part of the developer as they're trying to, like, please don't look, I want you to see it, but I don't want you to look, you know, I don't want you to judge this. So there's a lot of good commentary here. It's well narrated. It's got that British wit that I just love. There's a lot of fun side things you can do here. I mean, there's one room that is just to pressing buttons. I spent so long just to press all the buttons in that room, and you get a secret side kind of ending, if you will. It's not an ending because the game restarts and stuff like that, but you get rewarded for going through that. So yeah, there's a lot of thought put in here. I just really enjoyed it. I had a good laugh. Yes, it's very short, and as a result, that's why it kind of sits here in this comfortable, like, bubble of a couple of very short experiences, but on the positive end of this list. But I really recommend it. It's like £1.50 on Steam, so I highly recommend it if you want to experience it. But in a similar vein, next up on this list is Try Again, which is a university project. I think it's USC Games. And again, we're talking about a 20-minute, 30-minute game exploring you know, the stresses that developers are put in by the publishers to make a game that, you know, to meet deadlines, to come up with something that's going to be interesting for both marketable for the publisher, but also entertaining for the player while staying within the creative, you know, the creator's kind of desire. You're playing as a test character in this developer's games, and you're going through different builds of the game and stuff, and you're following that character's realization of what the developer is going through in that. Again, I don't want to talk about it too much, but the fact that it's got the voice of Nolan North and oh my god, my brain's gone blank, hang on. Stephanie Kerbis. My brain always draws a blank there, sorry. It's got their amazing voice actors that really make you connect with these characters that are, you know, not exceptionally developed, but they are highly entertaining. I really recommend this one. I had a good laugh to the point that I didn't realise going in. It's a free game, so you are not losing anything by checking this out. You're just gaining entertainment and a lot of thought-provoking, you know, examination of how creatives can feel. I was so engrossed. I didn't realise that this was such a short game. I sat down, I was ready to play it for a length of time, and then when it ended, after like 20 minutes, I was like, wait, what? I didn't believe it. So I was like trying to play it through again, thinking it would change or end differently, and it did not. And then I was just sad. It's really, you're just like, wait, it's just started, let's go! And then it's like, oh. But I really recommend it. Yeah, that's Try Again. Definitely worth checking out. I don't want to say too much more about it. It's just a fun platformer that switches between like 2D and 3D kind of thing. So yeah, that's what. Sorry, I do these. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm always like, how do I end this segment and move on to the next one? And especially when it's such a short one, I'm like, wait, I've only said this. Come on, there's got to be something more. So I apologise at my really bad inability to segue onto the next one. So let's segue clumsily onto the next one. Another indie game, Amanda the Adventurer. This one was in development for quite a while. It went out, you know, several alphas went out and betas, and you're just like, oh no, please don't. And it changed a number of times during development. The style of it and stuff. One minute you're in the attic, and then you're in this like living room and stuff like that. I was a bit worried it was going to be another Hello Neighbor situation. But I followed this, I played the demo, I watched others play the alphas, and then I got the actual, I had it pre-ordered, I bought the game, I played it on the channel, and really enjoyed it. It's basic. You're in this, like, it's like in a panic room in a way. You're solving these riddles via watching these VHS tapes that have been abandoned and unearthed, featuring a very kind of Dora the Explorer parody character, along with her co-host Wooly. Poor Wooly. I won't say too much because obviously don't want to spoil stuff. But the story is you're following this character. You're in this. You're following these TV show that were created by this guy for like public access television, that then got picked up by some higher ups and kind of taken over against the creatives. Again, I feel like a lot of these games that I've played are very think about the creator kind of thing, and maybe that, as a creative person, that's what, you know, appeals to me. But you can see a lot of tropes in this game and you're like, oh no, and it goes for that very lore heavy without actually giving you the lore, that you've got to study videos and you know, your game theories and your other video essayists that try and rip apart everything and explain the story. It falls into that kind of mascot horror while just skirting the genre a little bit. I don't know, it feels like it falls in, but I just found this really entertaining. I found the riddles entertaining. They're quite simplistic, but certainly when you're looking for the extra stuff and you're going through replays of the area and you're discovering more stuff, I just really enjoyed this one. It's maybe, I don't know, a little bare bones. You're trapped in this attic, you're trying to get out, and I think some of the vagueness of it at times can just make you go, oh, well, okay. And it doesn't help that each video, you know, sets up this clue that you're supposed to register for the riddle, and then it literally on the table behind you puts your next puzzle piece. It's not like it hints that you need to find the piano to get the next clue. It just puts the piano on the table and goes, deal with it, figure out the puzzle. And you're like, oh, it's not like you're searching around the room to find the actual puzzles to solve. That I found, I guess it's that element of, you know, again, we'll get to it on our next game, but that trying to appeal to children that want these horror experiences, so you're making it simplistic for them. I feel like there's this whole genre now that are kind of frustrating, but at the same time, this game especially kind of takes that mentality and just tries to develop the horror genre in its own way. I just found it entertaining. The puzzles were fun. The characters were fun. Pissing off Amanda is hilarious, especially when she just gets sarcastic. It's like, my favourite to this day is easily when you say that you're going to buy your friend bubble wrap. When you're going to buy your friend's birthday present from the post office, and Amanda's just like, wow, your friend must really love you and your present from the post office. And I'm just like, dude, somebody buys me bubble wrap for my birthday, I'm going to be happy for months. But her attitude, the voice acting is so good, and I really enjoy Wooly, that nervousness and stuff like that. Yeah, I felt like it had its dark moments that worked really well. I was genuinely creeped out, and even though it does do that whole kids horror thing, there were times where I was genuinely creeped out and just felt shiver go through me. And for that, it has to be given extra kudos. So, yeah, that was Amanda the Adventurer. Next up is Security Breach Ruin. well, I should have said, sorry, didn't say it all. Five Nights at Freddy's security breach ruin. Okay. So I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible, because I realised last time I talked about FNAF security breach for ages, because I had so many issues in this with it. This is the DLC, free DLC, which really kind of, pans back, really narrows in. You're in these very linear, dark hallways, in an undisclosed time that is post what happened in security breach. But it starts to make you question what may or may not have been the true ending in security breach. But then you're led to believe that maybe just the ending you thought was real isn't real, and stuff like that. And it does the normal FNAF stuff that tries to drive you in circles so that it doesn't have to commit to a certain answer. That you're always like, let me theorize about this, let me try and figure this out. Oh, you theorize that? Well, how about if that might be true, but here? And it also relies too much on this knowing the wider universe, knowing what happens in the books, knowing what happens in other games, knowing what happens in the blinking like logbooks and stuff like that. It gets up its own art. It gets frustrating, because then you are absolutely, depriving casual gamers from any kind of clue from what's going on. Now, Ruin does try to be a lot more clear with its story about where it's going, who you're playing as, and stuff like that. Obviously, you need to really play the main game before playing this, and it tells you that in the menu. It's like, for narrative, reasons, you might be better off playing Security Breach before playing this DLC. I would argue that's kind of a lie, because there's not much story in Security Breach. But obviously, Gregory and Vanessa are things that are set up here in the main game that are then brought up again here. Specifically, the Vanny Mask, which your character, Cassie, who goes in to help Gregory after receiving a call from him, because, it's not sus at all, you're then given the Vanny Mask to use. It unfortunately can't figure out the difference between virtual reality and augmented reality, which then makes you go, this makes no sense. But for all its problems, the reason why this is so high up on this list is because I just had fun. I can't explain it. Like, you don't have Freddy with you, so already you're missing kind of his companionship for all its pluses, pros and cons, that frustrating but kind of, oh, you're my superstar and stuff like that. That fun of having him with you, that is a bit of a loss. But I don't know, there are a lot of frustrations here, a lot of issues here, but I feel like Stillwell, the developers, really put more focus into it, maybe hearing the feedback from Security Breach. I unfortunately encountered numerous bugs that had me falling through the map constantly and screwing up my save states, which doesn't help because the checkpoint in here, you do not have save stations like you do in the main game. So once it saves you at a checkpoint, that's it. You're stuck at that point. And it's frustrating when you then want to go back through stuff or fix stuff, and it turns out that no, you have to play through the game again if you want to get to that, especially if your game glitches. And yeah, the AI just, don't even get me started on the Mini Music Man section. Garbage. Broken as all hell. The fact that you can do what you're supposed to do and there will still be music men just randomly walking around that will then detect you when they're supposed to be elsewhere. What's even the point? It was infuriating. But frustratingly fun. I can't deny it. It had that darkness and creep factor that had me intrigued right up to the end, even when you start realizing that things are not what they seem. I just found myself way more entertained than I was. There was a lot more to like about Security Breach, just location-wise, but the fact that Ruin really tries to hone in on that scariness, it's not scary, but it's certainly a lot more creepy. So yeah, again, if you already own Security Breach, it's free DLC. It's a couple hours long, probably 3 hours, I don't know. I always take longer to do stuff, so. But, you know, Candy Cadet's here for probably in the wrong place. I want to put him somewhere. I don't get why he's not in Security Breach, why he wouldn't be in the pizzeria, the FNAF 6 pizzeria, instead of this random stairway. Yeah, there's just... What was the other one I was going to say? My goodness. Candy Cadet and Bonnie. We found Bonnie, Glamrock Bonnie, which was pretty cool. So yeah, there was stuff here that I really enjoyed, while there are frustrations. I don't know, I really enjoyed recording for the channel, so much so that good friend, after a random comment that I said without really thinking too much of it, I made a joke about good friend and channel supporter Mulu buying me a wet floor sign because I had an ongoing joke about sucking the souls out of these things during the series. And as you might have noticed, they got me for Christmas my own little wet floor sign that I can suck the soul out of. That's how easily I was entertained by this game. So yeah, I can see where they have tried and listened to feedback, but it's just still problematic. So, but for free DLC, I guess I can't complain too much. But moving on, we have got Sniper Elite 5. Why is this series still going? So it's fair to say that Sniper Elite 4 did not exactly enthrall me. After Rebellion's other game, Strange Brigade, kind of took them down this route of making everything about 4-player co-op and this kind of season pass kind of style gameplay. 4 really opened up this open worldness that made it frustrating to navigate and do your missions within the game, and took away from that charm of you know, like number 2 and 3 kind of thing. Number 5 seems to be paring it back slightly to that kind of more, it feels a lot more classic, yet still keeping the online presence, which is frustrating. There is nothing like, there's no reason, I didn't select to go online, and yet at one point I got knocked down, I got killed, was bleeding. I'm laying on the floor and it says bleeding out, and my character's laying there going, please somebody help, and I'm like, I'm not online. Why have you got me waiting for somebody else to come help me? And it's got that, and it's this open world map where you're expected to just walk around because it doesn't put markers properly on your map. It doesn't properly help you find your markers when you're walking around. When you use the binoculars to spot things, it doesn't always remove those markers from your sight. Other times they're difficult to see. It's just, and then you have to walk around this massive map, going from place to place, hoping that it will trigger a side mission. And I spent hours, actual hours on the first map just trying to find the extra content. No, I didn't have to. I could have just gone through the main missions, but I was like, okay, I don't want to do just that. I want to do extra stuff. It's got its classic inconsistency with whether bodies are going to stay there or disappear when you're looking for stuff. I killed a general and went to go and our character, we're still playing as Carl, classic Carl, whatever his name is, my brain's gone blank. We're playing as Carl still, I want to say Fairbanks, but it's not. Carl Fair, whatever it is. Sorry, I would go look it up. I could. I'm not going to. He's back and looking more like Sam Fisher. He's even got the kind of black sweater with the holsters. And I'm like, and of course, as a series that relies on stealth, unless you don't want to play it in stealth, but for a game that relies on stealth, the fact you're going around looking like Sam Fisher is really distracting. It's got a lot of those kind of things where bodies either disappear or, you know, stay there when you don't need them. As I was saying, I killed a general and Carl's like, I should really search him. He might something I need. Except then I died, and when I went looking for the general, he was gone. I was like, well, I hope whatever he had wasn't important. Maybe it would have been notes on a side mission. But it has a lot of stuff here that's just the same. The animations for putting breach charges on walls and stuff is still here. You know, that highlighting that it does. There's you know, all the weapons are the same, all the stats are the same, all the upgrades and stuff. I don't necessarily feel it work. It's trying for different kind of upgrade systems that just don't work in the way they did in previous titles. But at the same time, it feels more of the same. And as a result, that's why I've put it so high up, because for all of its issues, for all of the kind of things I feel that Developer Rebellion have really gone astray on since working on stuff like Strange Brigade, and then later like Zombie Army 4, they've put these new you know, elements into the Sniper Elite franchise that I just don't feel gel so well, and just did not work for me. But it was still entertaining. If you're after that game where you spend forever killing things and then hiding the bodies, hours wandering around carrying a body over your shoulder, trying to find somewhere to dump it so it won't be found, this is the game for you. If you're after a game for sniping, go back to number 2. There are so few opportunities for a good snipe. When I did get a good snipe on like a German sniper or something, oh, that was so good, so rewarding. But they are so far between. You are in these open areas where there's no sound creators, so it's not like you can really snipe anyway. You know, there's very few moments where you've got an airplane going over or something like that. I just found there a lack for a game that's called Sniper Elite. I found very little focus on the sniping. And that's fine if you're playing, say, the Zombie Army games, but that's not what this is supposed to be. And I just felt like there was no skill required. It was more like, oh no, just mainly focus on the sneaking up behind the Nazis and taking them out, which I love, so I'm not complaining, but it's not necessarily the only thing I go to that series for. It's interesting that on smaller maps like Guernsey, you're still spending hours just trying to find the side missions and stuff. But I found myself continuously playing. I found myself stuck, you know, sucked in. Even though, you know, the story, we're now in France. And we're getting near the end of the war. We're at like 1944. I think it's connected to the Normandy landings and stuff like that. So I'm curious how much longer they're going to go before they then have to go back in time. But we're getting near the end of the war, and it's that kind of thing where you've still got your main antagonist, Muller, who Carl says the name of, and I swear he's saying Mulder sometimes. It's just this weird Muller, and I'm like, is he saying Muller or Mulder? It's kind of frustrating that Muller is still in this franchise. You're just like, dude, how do we keep ending all your plans in every game and you keep coming back? And he comes back more and more scarred. I just found it exceptionally engaging. I just couldn't help. I find the gameplay addictive. I just feel like this push towards the 4-player open world. That's fine if you're playing with 4 players. But to have these massive maps that you're trying to find, and you're getting spotted sometimes with no warning whatsoever, and then you're just having to keep running until the alert goes off, kind of thing. You end up in situations where you feel like you're playing a Far Cry game because you're looking for the alarm to take out to stop extra guards being called on. I just found it annoyingly addictive, and that's why I had to put it this high, because I just kept playing even when I was frustrated. I wish Rebellion would go back it feels like they tried it here while also trying to cater to the multiplayer gamers, kind of thing. So but yeah, I mean, you can't go wrong with some good sniping and stuff, but the fact that a lot of even the X-ray shots that kind of really built this franchise didn't feel as plentiful or as rewarding. So yeah, it's good, but has its issues. But next up, we have got Choo Choo Charles. Okay, this game clearly highly inspired by things like, Bethesda titles, your Skyrims and your Fallouts. This kind of going around a map and encountering NPCs who give you missions and then you go off. Meanwhile, you're being chased down by this killer spider train, which is excellently designed. Again, this is very much a mascot horror kind of game, where it's horrific but clearly angled towards younger adults / children. But the design of Choo Choo Charles is really good. He's genuinely creepy. And some of the gameplay is just very unnerving. They have this section that absolutely rips off Slender, the 8 pages. But it was frustrating for me personally from a visual standpoint, but at the same time, the fact that you've got this stress of this one entity chasing you while there's also the threat of Charles randomly turning up. I just found it genuinely, I keep saying genuinely, but I was actually, I could feel the blood pumping and stuff like that. And I think what helped me in my gameplay of this is that I was streaming it. I did 2 live streams. And the chat was really helping me along, keeping me going when I was ready to stop. There were sections where I just could not see or figure out, because the AI is a bit problematic. But again, this is an indie game, and yet it feels a lot more complete than some AAA games. Which is weird, because really a lot of the action, mainly because you're going around on this little train, and if you try to venture anywhere else in the map that isn't a settlement on the rails, you're more than likely just going to get stranded with Charles coming after you and killing you. So it can feel in a way like very sparse, and yet the NPCs that you encounter are so quirky, they are entertaining. I'm sorry, Pickles Lady is still my favourite thing.
I
can't explain it. And I think, like I say, streaming and having the chat there helping. We had a couple new people. I have to give a shout out to Richard and Brendan Basalta and their Scott, who joined in. And then we had the band, you know, Mulu, Bottle, Tom and Chris, and Merv and stuff like that, joining in for the second part. And that was like a 6-hour stream because I got stuck on one section for an hour. And I just kept having this drive, and nevermore has, you know, that cry of one more. That was, honestly, I had so much fun there, and I have to thank you guys for being there. But I think that really added to that experience. But at the same time, I just found the game enjoyable. The fact it's a complete game, I know since I played, they've added a nightmare mode, which looks terrifying. It's darker and a lot more stressful, a lot harder. I am frustrated that I didn't get the last achievement, because I'd wasted so much scrap that you collect, and you lose if you die. Because I didn't get enough scrap to fully upgrade one of my stats on my train, I missed out on one achievement, so I've got to go through the game again to get that just to get that one achievement. But otherwise, I just really enjoyed this. I can't explain it. It's sparse and yet just entertaining. I think that's the thing. That's the main word for this game, is it's entertaining. And regardless of the fact that it's in that mascot horror genre, and I don't know what they thought they were doing by teaming up with Gartner Banban to have Choo Choo turn up, Charles turn up in that. You do have to wonder, but but I just really enjoyed it, and I really look forward to what this developer does next, especially if after this success they get more money to make another game. This game does tease a sequel. I don't know. I don't know if doing a sequel to this would recapture the same energy and joy that came from this one, and the kind of uniqueness about it. But at the same time, I do want to see more. So yeah, that's why I had to put that one here. Next up is another indie game, not for broadcast. This is published by tinyBuild, which brought us Hello Neighbor. So I was a bit dubious going into this one. Thankfully, it is made by a different developer. But I have very mixed feelings about this. I have exceptionally enjoyed playing it. I love the British humour that's here. It's got a very Five Nights at Freddy's resource, I was going to say resource management, but it's not. But you've got these free screens that you're switching between as you're controlling this nightly news broadcast. And you're having to stop, do censorship and stop interference in the signal and switch between cameras. And I really, really enjoy that. And the fact that you're enjoying the newsreaders and all their bickering behind the scenes while really silly adverts are playing, as adverts that you have to queue up. There's a lot of fun gameplay here, and there's also a really interesting story brewing. You go between these nights of controlling the news to then these text-based story choices that you have to read through and then pick your options, and they drive forward the story of your character. Who is, who was a janitor and somehow got roped into controlling the control board and stuff like that. While this very 1984 government is taking over and sneaking in and really driving people's prejudices and very class-driven, and considering England is a very class-driven country, you really feel it tapping into those paranoias and stuff like that of who has a legal passport and who is that kind of xenophobia and those kind of mentalities. and the fear of being watched. It like I say, it very much has those 1984 feelings. I just really enjoy it, but it does as a result, because of how the text-based story choices are presented, it drives the pacing really, really poorly. You'll be doing all the action of trying to rub your head and pat your tummy and all that stuff in one section, and then all of a sudden it's just like, oh, let's read some text, and you're like, okay. Okay, carry on. And it goes on for quite a while, but then you'll get these TV sections where you're sat through like 10-minute sections that you're supposed to control, and it just drags on, and the gameplay is not always constant, because it seems to gets that you don't want to gimmick each time, but then it's like, oh, I don't know how to make you change between, you know, different gameplay styles and stuff. So it really, really struggles with its pacing and with its the way it levels its gameplay. But I just really enjoy the acting, the humour, the story, and the fact that those story choices can lead into stuff that happens in the TV studio. The fact that there's this one point where you hallucinate, and there's this you hallucinate this character, one of the newsreaders, singing a song about clearly how much you clearly love your daughter more than your son, because you've been more amenable to your daughter's demands. And you're like, wait, so the choices I made have actually affected what... And I'm like, I kind of want to see what the other songs are. If I had been more towards the son or whatever like that, it probably would have been exactly the same with just a word change. But it makes you wonder, and then makes you paranoid about the choices that you're making, which was highly entertaining. I've not completed this one yet. I've been streaming it. Nobody's been watching the streams, unfortunately. I don't know if they're just not interested, or if it's just the times that I've streamed that hasn't engaged people. But personally, I'm really enjoying it. I love, I'm streaming it because I really want that kind of input of people helping make the choices and stuff like that. Especially then when I can blame them for the for any, you know, throwback that kind of gets in our face. I just enjoy this one. I just feel it has a lot of issues that need to be ironed out. I've not played any of the DLC yet, but for an indie game, I feel like it's a very complete package, and really entertaining, and got that British wit that I love so much. So that's why I had to put that this high up on the list. Next up, we have got Baldur's Gate 3, and I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for putting it here in the penultimate spot, but I just haven't completed it because that would take me like another 100 hours to do. I haven't completed it, so it didn't feel right putting it in the top spot, but for what I have played of this, so much fun. So well done. What Larian Studios have done here, complete game. I have never played Dungeons and Dragons, just because I've not had the friend group to do it. But as far as I know, it is quite true to the source material. I think it's like book 5 or something of D&D that it's taken from. But regardless of whether I know Dungeons and Dragons or not, I feel totally engaged with the characters. It's top-down, kind of isometric, not top-down, it's this kind of isometric adventure game where you're looking for loot, you know, your resources like potions and stuff like that. And those kind of isometric games I usually struggle with, just because on a visual level. And I can't say that those kind of games usually entice me. But I was super fascinated by the trailers and that I saw. And I thought I would give it a go. And I don't regret trying it. And not just because I'm playing as a dragon queen. I do think it's sad that there are morons out there that have a little hissy fit because there's a gender, pronoun, whatever selection, you know, absolutely skippable gender selection at the beginning of the game. They need to get their grow the F up. But the fact that it gives you those options, that it is accessible to people, regardless of your choices and stuff, like, you know, like, not choices, but, I mean, choices in that how you want to play. It's so engaging, and the characters are fun, super campy, and it's so well acted as a result. It's so silly. I feel like I've really found my way. It's easily, as somebody who doesn't normally play these kind of games, I found it easy to access. I do have some visual issues with it, especially the HUD at the bottom, or the UI kind of thing. But otherwise, I've really enjoyed it. I can't express how deep and just extensive this world is that you feel sucked into. I just really enjoyed it. Like I say, unfortunately I can't put it any higher. I don't know that I would necessarily put it any higher, but that's because I haven't completed it. But I just really recommend it if you're after a good adventure game, where you're after good dialogue options and character development. The fact that it's not trying to, you know, throw season passes and, monetization at you. The fact it is just a complete package is what really sells this as well. The fact that it's so extensive in that, you know, one campaign can be over 100 hours long. My biggest issue is because you can play this in co-op. My biggest issue is if you join somebody else's game, you can't transfer your character into that game. You have to create a new character. And that I wish was fixed. I don't know if they've patched it since. I don't know if they have any interest in patching it. I get it if you're joining somebody else's campaign. Sorry, brain is apparently not working tonight. If you join somebody else's campaign, you know, with all their choices and stuff like that, then I get that you can't be, because your character that you create is in your own campaign, has obviously their own choices and stuff like that. So I get maybe there's some cohesion issues there, but I just find it frustrating that you then have to spend time going through that process. If you're like, oh, I want to play with you, you know, or whatever, and then you have to, oh, okay, hang on, I'll be with you in 4 hours. I mean, it doesn't take that long, but you know, I'll be with you in a while after I've created my character. The fact that I played with good friend Bottle, and he had he'd played like 70 hours at the time, and he joined my game to help me out because he's really knowledgeable about these kind of games, and I really appreciated him helping me out, you know, be more knowledgeable. Obviously, I'm still not an expert at these kind of things, but I felt I came away a lot more knowledgeable thanks to his help. But the fact that coming into my game, he had to create a new character, I felt kind of bad for. Obviously, it didn't affect his campaign. That's a separate thing. But, yeah, I just feel like if you've grown attached to your character, to then have to create a new one for doing that would be one of my biggest peeves. But otherwise, amazing game. Lots of fun. Look forward to playing more. Highly addictive. And really look forward to continuing and seeing the campaign through to its end, and maybe trying different choices on another playthrough or something.
Now, that's all I have to say besides, and I really mean this, moo.
Finishing up, my favourite game of the year. I'm going to get so much flack for this, but again, I think compared to the other games on this list, I completed this, and it's just stuck with me. It is easily my favourite game of the year. Was easily My Friendly Neighborhood. An indie game, mascot horror game, and yet its own thing. But it's you play as this in this Sesame Street, puppet style world. You're this human that goes to stop this Sesame Street style show broadcasting, but it's got a very Resident Evil feel. It's a horror game, plays on those kind of, oh, nice and fluffy things from your nostalgia can actually be scary. And as a result, it's just, the story is kind of passed out in these, you have some lore drops, you have some newspapers that you find, but it's not overwhelming. You get the idea of the story through dialogue and stuff, but it's not hitting you on the head, but it's not making you go, wait, do I need to go read this book or listen to this or find some cut content to know what the hell is going on? This is a complete game, very well handled. If you really push it to its limits, like using cheats like the Outerbout, where you can have your free roam camera and stuff like that. If you push it to its limits, you might get some bugs, but otherwise very tightly, no real glitches. Highly entertaining. Yes, I can see why people get frustrated with it regarding the very limited dialogue of the puppets. To have only like, what we got? 6 characters, main characters, enemies that are constantly chasing you, spouting the same 5 lines. That can get frustrating, and there is a seriously limited number of enemy types. The fact you have the main puppets, you have a dog puppet that is later, and then you have like the bosses, some of which have explanations, one of which I am still baffled by, the one with loads of eyes at the entryway to the offices building. That I'm still, because all the other ones like Goblet and Arnold and that have their own script blocks, script pages that you find to give you some idea of their character. The thing at the doorway had nothing unless I missed something, and you're just like, oh, okay. I can see why people have issues with the game because of those issues. The thing I will defend the dialogue, though, is despite the fact that there is such limited dialogue for characters, I will say, though, clearly the game has its favourite characters. The fact that you have a lot more Normans and a lot more Leonards than necessarily Lilianas and Georges, they are so rare. The fact that it clearly has its favourite 3 and then the other 2 are just like occasional. I will say that is frustrating, and again an inconsistency that can be a little frustrating, but you get so much from the very small amount of dialogue drops that they have. You get so much personality from them. You get that, Norman is exceptionally self-conscious and very anxious. You get that Leonard, loves his music and just loves to sing and stuff like that. Junebug is a ball of joy. Liliana is a little special, and George is very aggressive. So you get the real feeling for these characters, and you care. You can't help but, I said this during my playthrough, you cannot help but care and join in with their games and stuff. And when you get to the end of this story and you find out, like I say, this does a really good job of, shelling out these pieces of story. The fact that you find out that there was this war, and people have become more and more apathetic and closed off, and F everybody else kind of thing. The fact that it has that stuff, and yet at no point makes you go, it doesn't beat you over the head with this kind of, the puppets are alive, But we're not going to get into that. Just accept it. And you do. There's no like, oh, let's have the lore of how the puppets came to life and why do they all share a hive mind? Do all the Leonards share the same thoughts and feelings? Or are they just their own character? No, they're just there. They're just the characters and you can just enjoy that. You're not just, I love that it's not, don't get me wrong, I love lore in a game, I love theorising and stuff like that, but sometimes you just want to play a game and just accept that the characters are not over explained. So you feel for them, but there's not like this, would you like to know the back character? No, just give me a story, a good story. And this does, and by the time you get to the ending, and you find out why things are like they are at the studio, it's so heartbreaking. You view these characters in such a different way, and I'm not going to spoil it here because I really recommend you play this game. But this game has stuck with me. Months later, I'm still like, I love that game. And since they've added Neighborhood, you know, that kind of COD zombies kind of mode, you know, where you just shoot and try and get the highest points and stuff like that. But you get different characters to play as you unlock more and more. It's just highly, again, this is a complete package. No glitching, or at least minimal. It's had the, and for you know, the Szymanski brothers have put so much effort in here for a very small team. It feels far better than any AAA game that I have played for a while. Obviously there are AAA games that are better and stuff like that, but I'm just saying for what this is, it was worth every penny. To think that I paid £30 for, you know, Walking Dead Destinies, and yet I paid, what, 17 quid for this, and I got way more entertainment, far more content. What, 6 hour, I mean, I think you can do it in 4 hours, but, you know, I got that much entertainment out of it. It is so good. It easily, it just has stuck with me, and that's why I had to put it as #1 on my list for 2023. But that's it, guys. I don't think there's much more I can say. I've waffled on enough. For those of you that have been watching my videos through the year, thank you so much for your support. I would love to hear your thoughts on these games, especially if you watch my gameplay of them. Obviously not all of the games on this list I did videos on, but I would really love to hear your thoughts on the games, and you know, what you've taken away from this list. I hope you have had, by the time this goes up, a very lovely holiday season, and that you have a very happy new year. And unfortunately I have some technical issues at the moment. My camcorder has broken down. The reason for the bad quality on this video is I am using my webcam, which then on capture is for some reason doing a very low resolution. So that's the reason for that issue. But yeah, videos are going to be a little low in, won't be coming for a little while. But please share your thoughts. Thank you so much for your support again. Take care, stay awesome, and I'll see you somewhere down the line.